Austin. I am here. I am mic'd. Watch, we're going to hide this little cord here while we're talking. And I'm so excited to be here with you this morning. I want to ask first, how many of you are attending your first in-person conference since the pandemic? Oh, okay. Well, first of all, congratulations for making it. Second of all, thank you so much, because I think most of you are wearing pants. Now, I have noticed that a couple of you forgot to take the tags off, because I know you haven't worn hard pants in like 2.5 years at this point. So thank you for being here. I also want to ask, where are my extroverts in the crowd? Who are the people that woke up at like 5 this morning and like could not wait to get out of bed and get into this building to be around the humans? I'm looking at you, Max. All right, so if you are an extrovert, I'm going to need you to cover your ears for a minute. Just keep scrolling. If you're on TikTok, like keep scrolling. My introverts, we're going to be okay. We're going to make it through this day, and after we've peopled for a good 6 hours or so, you can crawl back in your bed with your hot cocoa and your puppy and recharge. Because believe it or not, that is actually me. I will sit up here and I will bounce all around and I will be so excited to see you, and then I will not talk for 3 days. But that's okay. So first, again, thank you so much to Agile Austin for having me here. I have a long history with this conference. I attended this conference for the first time as a baby Scrum Master. Were any of you coming to this conference when it was at the Renaissance Hotel? Yes. So I was a baby Scrum Master. I was starry-eyed. I was innocent. I had so much belief in this movement, and I was so excited to just be a part of this community. See, I had never attended a PI planning at that point. And I also had never witnessed people arguing on LinkedIn about what we need to call things, because that is the most important part of the Agile movement. So again, I have a long history with this conference. I've come a long way since being that baby little Scrum Master. I've had the opportunity to be the leader of the largest Agile association on the planet by membership, Scrum Alliance. And since then, I've gone on to help other organizations and help leaders to not just be more agile, but to actually start developing their leaders and looking at new ways of working even beyond agile. So I get asked a lot about my journey. I was a woman in tech. I started at a very young age, and I was not a developer. Side note, the thing I learned from college and my software development classes is I have so much respect for developers, and I never want to be one. But I get asked a lot, like, how did you develop through this journey? How did you get from being that baby Scrum Master to leading Scrum Alliance and then going on to even push the boundaries of Agile with other organizations? So what I'd like to do today is share some of that with you. Do any of you remember, I really am reaching back, so I might be the only old person who remembers this. There was a song back in '99 called Everyone's Free to Wear Sunscreen by Baz Luhrmann. And it was basically like a song where he gave advice to the class of '99. Am I dating myself? Does anybody remember that song? Okay, so this is not going to be your typical keynote. This is going to be my version of everybody's free to wear sunscreen, in the sense that I'm going to walk through some of the things that helped me through this journey. I'm going to talk about some of the things that helped me get up off the ground when it was hard, because this is not easy work that we do here. So is that okay with everyone? Can we do like a little everyone's free to wear sunscreen style keynote today? Is that all right? All right. So my journey began with a random yes, actually I would say a reluctant yes, on a random Tuesday. So I was 20 years old. I had just signed up to do some temp work here in Austin. I was in college, and it was 10 a.m. and I was fast asleep because I had been doing homework really late the night before. Because I know all of you, when you were 20, you were doing homework really late, right? So the phone rings, I answer the phone, and this woman tells me that she has quite the opportunity for me. And at 10 a.m., Nothing sounds like an amazing opportunity when you're 20 years old. But she said, no, really, I do. I want to tell you about this place called the Scooter Store. And I don't know about you, but this was the immediate vision that I had, which was the second reason I almost hung up the phone on her and went back to bed. But that's not what she was talking about. She said, no, this is a medical equipment company. Their mission is to provide freedom and independence to people with limited mobility. That was enough to make me sit up in bed. That sounded like a mission. That sounded like something I wanted to say yes to. So my first lesson of this keynote is, reluctant yeses on random Tuesdays can change your life. That one yes led to 12 years of yes. I worked at this company that was so mission-driven. I saw lives change, literally hundreds of thousands of lives changed. Not just our customers, but our own. My life changed when I met my husband, I got married, I had babies, I grew in my career, I learned about Scrum, I started attending Agile Austin, which by the way is quite a drive from New Braunfels, but it was worth it. And all along the way, this company was there for me. Every life change, every moment where I needed to be a human, they were there. When I had deaths in the family, when I had births in the family, they treated me like I was someone of value. And again, I learned about Agile there. So we learned about getting feedback. We learned about vulnerability and courage. They were human-centric, and they cared about us as human beings because that's where the value was. We were better at what we did, especially in software development, because we were humans and we allowed other people to be humans. I tell you this story for two reasons. One, because they set my standards so high. I mean, they are why I am who I am today, 10 years after I've left the Scooter Store. And for those of you who are doing the math, let's just do it. I'm 42. But they are the reason that I am who I am. So I want you to know that, first of all, that work can be human, and that we can be a part of that humanity and make it so for other people, especially those of us who are part of this Agile movement. Because if you look at the Agile values and principles, at the core of each one of them is simply humanity. It's let's treat each other like we're human beings. The second reason I tell you this is, again, a reluctant yes on a random Tuesday can absolutely change your life. Actual Melissa, not pictured. So the Scooter Store taught me to challenge the status quo. And I don't know how many of us can actually say that about our company, but they did. They taught me that just because we had always done something doesn't mean that that's a good reason to continue doing it. They taught me to ask questions. They taught me to ask why. We were actually employee-owned, so anytime that something came up that people were kind of questioning, our CEO, our owner, would say, you're an owner of this company, do something. Ask the questions, push harder. And that worked really well at the Scooter Store. But then I got out into the rest of the world. And as I would go into other organizations as an employee, and I would ask questions, some leaders appreciated that, and some didn't. I definitely got some pushback from time to time. Some who are you? Who are you to be asking me these questions? And I was like, I'm Melissa Boggs. Oh, that's not good enough. Okay. I have a very specific memory of being at a conference, not this one, but sitting at a table just like the one that you're at right now, at a round table. And I literally had my head in my hands like this. And I was actually staring down at the notes app on my phone, and I was so discouraged. Because as I was going to all these sessions, I would get excited. I'd have all this energy inside me and be like, yeah, we can do it. But the pace of change and the willingness for change at the organization that I was at the time was so slow that I just became sad. I just became depleted from all of these amazing things that I was hearing. I had a friend walk up to me and sit down next to me, and he started to talk to me about why I was here and what was important about the work that we do in this movement. And he just started to pick me up. He started to give me hope again. And so that's what I hope to do today with this talk. I am not going to help you with your agile transformation in the next 45 minutes. There are so many amazing speakers here today that are going to help you with that. What I want to help you with is those moments when you have your head in your hands. I want to give you something to hold on to, something to reach into your pocket and grab those tools that will help you get up again. Because those things are going to happen. Those moments are going to happen time after time when you are in this type of work that is challenging what people believe and what people think is right about how we work together. And so over the next little bit, that's what we're going to talk about. For me, those three things were, spoiler alert, it was in the title, community, courage, and care. And this is how I define these three things. A feeling of fellowship with others as a result of sharing common attitudes, interests, and goals. We are all here. We are already in community. Aren't we lucky? Courage, the ability to do something that frightens you. And care, looking after and providing for the needs of. So let's get into it. So we are hardwired for community. Like literally our brains need each other. We need each other for co-regulation. We need each other for inspiration. We need each other for just thinking. We think better at times when we are together. The thing is, though, community sometimes can be just born. Sometimes communities naturally flourish and come to be. But sometimes we have to build them. Sometimes it has to be intentional. And that's not always easy. But there are ways in which that we can go about making that happen. So I want to talk about three elements of community that have helped me. First of all is looking into my team. So at the scooter store, my very first Scrum team was the epitome of joy at work. And I am not being sarcastic. That sounds like sarcasm, right? But I'm not being sarcastic. This team of people worked so incredibly well together for one reason and one reason only. We were committed to showing up as our authentic selves every day, but also respecting everyone else and their authentic selves. We worked super hard. This was, I'm about to freak a bunch of people out here. We used to test in production overnight. I saw you cringe. I won't get into why and the fact that it had to do with all of our environments not matching. But what that led to was these overnight releases once a month where we would share music, where we would laugh and have pizza, have candy. Some of you might know that like my kind of moniker in the Agile world is the hummingbird. This actually started back with that original team because I was the one that went and bought candy all the time. And I was known as the one that like kind of flitted around and subsisted on sugar. So they named me the hummingbird way, way back when. But this team, we had our share of rumbles. We fought, we argued, we bickered. Yes, we should release that. No, we shouldn't release that. Yes, we should show it to customers. No, we shouldn't. But at the end of the day, we walked out of any given room with a unified voice. We were creating community within our own team. It was right there in front of us. We didn't have to go out and find it somewhere else. So my first nudge to you is look within your team first. It doesn't happen overnight. This is where working agreements come into play. This is where your just ability and willingness to be vulnerable come into play. But you can begin to create that community, that fellowship inside your own team. The next place where I found community, this is going to shock you, is at conferences and at meetups. Agile Austin was a huge part of my growth in my career, especially early on. And I'll tell you why. I went on to like my next organization after the scooter store, and we were really struggling in our Agile transformation. We actually called it Agile transition back then. That is how old I am in this industry. Max is laughing. So we were really struggling, and I felt like I was failing. Like literally, I felt like I was failing. Do I need to quit this job and find a different job and go work somewhere else or do something else because I am not good at this? And I went to this conference, not my first one, but like this conference later down the road. And as I'm sitting in sessions, I'm hearing people tell the same stories as the things that I was experiencing. And the first time, I was like, oh, that's a coincidence. They're having the same struggles as us. By like the third or fourth story, I was like, oh, we ain't special. I literally went back to the office and people were like, what did you learn? I was like, I learned that we're not special. That everybody is having the same struggles that we are having. Everyone is struggling with, and I'm not calling anyone out here, leadership not understanding what Agile is. Everyone is struggling with, well, how do we do work in 2-week sprints? That doesn't make any sense. I have so many people nodding right now. I love this so much. Everyone is struggling with, well, we want to do this, but nobody else wants to change. It's everyone else's problem. Everyone is struggling with, what is this Agile thing anyway? You're the only person in the entire organization that knows what Scrum is or what the Agile Manifesto is. I walked away going, I'm not alone. Oh my gosh, I'm not alone. That means that there are other solutions out there. And even if they're not solutions, there are other people that can sit with me and be with me and recognize the pain and also the joy. Because those are also the same people that when you do put something out that's just incredible, that you've battled for, they're like giving you a high five because they know what that was like. So finding community, whether it's in meetups or conferences or just coffee with other people who do what you do, but maybe not at your company. Another thing that one of our teams did that was really fun was we were a fully remote team like way back when, like 2015, having nothing to do with the pandemic. And we connected with another team that was literally across the country and did a Zoom call just to talk about what it was like to be a remote Agile team. And it was just through LinkedIn. Like I literally put up a post and said, hey, is there anyone who's got a remote team that wants to chat with us? They said yes. So we created our own community. Lastly, I want to talk a little bit about storytelling because both of those things relate to your team and your community. There's an inextricable tie between storytelling and community. So if you go back to pre-writing, even like, ancient cultures, we passed on our cultures through storytelling. Grandparents to grandchildren, tribe to tribe, this is how we passed on who we were. If you think about your religious affiliations, your clubs, your sports teams, there's always a story aspect there, right? I mean, your indoor flag football team, people are telling stories from last season to the people of this season. This is how we create community because once again, it helps us to feel not alone. But it also helps us to pass on the things that are important to us. Parents pass on their values. Leaders pass on their values. And by telling those stories, not only are we passing that on, but we create space. So when I show up at a session today even, and I tell my story at a table, and I'm the first one to do it, I create space for other people to do the same. They feel safer. Oh, she told a story and she did not die. Perhaps I could tell a story and I will not die. So how many of you, if any, were actually at the Global Scrum Gathering here in Austin a couple years ago, 2019? Oh, some of you were here. So you probably heard me say in the opening that these 3 days might change your life. It's kind of my thing. So I actually want to flip that around for today. And I want to say that if you go to a table in a session today and tell your story, you might actually change someone else's life. Just today. So on that note, you thought I was going to let you sit there this whole time and not talk? No. So we're going to quickly, and I mean quickly, create a little community in this room and get some energy going. Before I set you off to do this really quick, how many of you know what to do when I do this with my hand? Yes! Yes. Okay, little trick, little agile trick, which I didn't know this was just an agile thing, but I go to other like meetings and they don't do this, and they need help. All right, so if you are not aware of what this is, if I raise my hand and you are in the middle of a sentence, I'm going to ask you to raise your hand too and finish your sentence, and then bring your attention back to the front. So let's practice very quickly. Just turn to your neighbor and start talking for a second. Talk, 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 talk. Do you know how magical that is for a person who's 5'1" in a giant crowded room? All right, this is going to be super quick because I am already running out of time, but I want you to find 2 other people. For this one, you can be at your table. You're not going to be only at your table for the rest of this talk, but I want you to share with 2 people something that people would not know about you by looking at your LinkedIn profile. You really only have about a minute to do this, so ready, set, go. Oh, okay.
More theater voice.
Okay, yeah, we'll do that.
Awesome.
Forgot to tell the Zoom people. For those of you who are on the Zoom, you are also welcome to share your things in the chat. Magic. All right. So that took a little bit of courage. Some of you just turned to complete strangers and shared something very vulnerable about yourself. Some of you were like, I have a cat. You know what? That's okay. We wouldn't know that from your LinkedIn profile. That is fine. Moving on to courage. We are not taught enough about courage in school. We are not taught to speak up when things don't feel right. We are not taught to ask questions. We are not taught to share our most vulnerable, innermost thoughts. Maybe that's okay sometimes. So there are 3 types of courage that I want to quickly talk about in the workplace. And I really think that if these are the things that we hone in on in terms of courage, that it actually helps everything else. Courage helps us with community. Courage helps us with care, et cetera, et cetera. So I want to start with the courage to ask. If you have a question in a room, even today in your session, and you're like, this feels like a stupid question, I guarantee you like 4 other people have the same question as you. So have the courage to ask the question. If you are at work and something doesn't feel right, have the courage to ask the question. And you might be asking like, well, how does that help me like dig out of the head and hands moment? Because you can sit in your integrity. When you ask the right questions or ask the question that no one else is willing to ask, you can sleep at night. Because you're not like, oh, I should have said something before that whole thing blew up in production. I really wish I would have asked that question. I have a friend who was a software developer in that first team that I was on. And we'd come to the table like right before release, and at the time I was a QA manager, and I would be like, hey, are we good? Are we on track? Is everything looking good? And like many of the developers would be like, and I had this one guy who's still like one of my most adored coworkers, and he would go, and I would say, Will, do you have a question? And he would ask whatever the question was that was making him go. So have the courage to ask. Here's a couple of them. Why? Can you explain? Why did we decide that? How did we get there? These questions about like, let's not make assumptions that everything is right just because so-and-so said so. The highest paid person in the room, the hippo, just because the hippo said so doesn't mean we have to take things at face value. The next one is the courage to try. For me, this has a lot to do with things like sprint reviews. The courage to try something and be imperfect is terrifying. The idea that we might show something to our customers that is not 2 years in the making and done is so scary. But the courage to be not perfect at something, to maybe even be a little bit terrible at it at first, is what leads us to perfection. So I want to introduce someone to you, my dear friend Amy. We're hoping the technology is going to work when I hit play on this over here. But Amy is going to talk to you actually a little bit about the courage to try and the courage to be vulnerable in your process. Everyone cross your fingers, ready? Can I see it? Cross your fingers. This is going to work, right?
Okay, so for 37 years of my life, I was always absolutely terrified to share my process with anybody because I was such a perfectionist. I was like, I will only share things when I am 100% proficient and it looks amazing and everybody's like, wow, you're so on point. It's incredible. And that works with some things, but there's a lot of things that it doesn't work with. And my daughter got into circus and I don't know, she was having so much fun. And I was like, wow, I mean, that is definitely not something that I can ever do on my own. She kind of dared me into it too. She was like, oh, Mom, it's really hard. You probably can't do it. So anyway, I was finally like, this is a really stupid way to live. Like, I'm just going to take a class and I'm going to embarrass myself in front of a bunch of tiny teenagers that have been doing gymnastics since they were 4. And I fell in love and it was like so hard and challenging, but also so rewarding. And so I wouldn't have had that if I was like, no, I can't possibly try it because I might look stupid or I might fall or do something awkward or I might not be strong enough to do that skill and I might embarrass myself. Like, who cares? Nobody cares. Nobody cares. Just get over it, you know? So it definitely still rears its ugly head when I am working on an act or performing, definitely. Sometimes it's weird showing my process when that happens, but yeah, like I get a lot of really good feedback when I do that, when I'm like, hey, this is the character I'm working on. This is the piece. Does this sequence fit here? Or, is there some funny little thing that I can do to bring the character or the story out? So yeah, definitely try to share as much and as often as you can, and you'll be probably pleasantly surprised.
We've heard you, Amy. All right, so you may be sitting there going, what in the world does a circus performer on a rope have to do with me and software development? But I don't know about you, I can't imagine anything more vulnerable than being in a leotard and swinging around on a rope and being willing to share that video with complete strangers in Texas. So if Amy can do it, you can do it. And I'm sure you did sort of get what Amy was getting at there, which is that when you were willing to share your process, when you're willing to try and be imperfect, you get the best feedback then. And you get the feedback before you've gone way too far in the wrong direction. But my God, does that take courage. Not only to do it, to try something new, to be imperfect at it, but then to show it to other people. Trust me, I get it. I will tell you that at Scrum Alliance, we were fully working in Scrum, shocker. And one of the things that we did for the first time was we began to share sprint reviews with actual members, actual Scrum Alliance members. So every 2 weeks, we would have people that showed up virtually for our sprint reviews. And when I tell you that the energy in the building changed, I cannot be more serious. Because 2 things happened. One, we started to get feedback and we started to go, oh, maybe that wasn't the right thing to release. We should try something else. But second, we started to become more connected to the people that we were delivering for. We became more connected to our membership because they were actual human beings that showed up, that said, oh, actually, we probably wouldn't use that whatever, but we'd use something similar like this. Or, oh my goodness, that's amazing, I would use that every single day. And you get like some joy from that, you know? And so the courage to not only try, but to share that process with other people, cannot obviously emphasize that enough. The last kind of courage, the courage to self-reflect. The courage to sit back and look at yourself, look at where you are in your career, look at where you are in your team. Are you happy? Are you thriving? Are you contributing? Are you showing up as the most whole and human person that you can? That takes courage. Because I don't know about you, but I don't always like what I see every time I look at what's going on with myself. So being intentional and having that courage on a regular basis, pretty important, but also pretty hard. I'm going to spare you this one just because we don't have enough time. But imagine that you were sharing with your friends what's something that you're afraid to try, say, or ask at work right now. So instead of like doing it all in a big group, I actually do want you to just take like 20 seconds right now and think about this question. All right, lastly, care. This one seems pretty simple. Seems. So let's start with caring for others. How many are familiar with the Prime Directive for Retrospectives from Norm Kurth? Got a couple people. Awesome. I'm actually going to read it to you really quickly. Regardless of what we discover, we understand and truly believe that everyone did the best job they could, given what they knew at the time, their skills and abilities, the resources available, and the situation at hand. And the idea, this comes from his book on retrospectives, was that we would sort of read this out at the beginning of a retro, just to reset, to remind ourselves that we're doing the best we can. It helps us to assume positive intent, to come into the conversation with whole, open hearts. But I will tell you, that first Scrum team that I was on, we just lived by this. This wasn't just in retros. This was every day. Every day, I have to believe that you are doing the best that you can. And when I start from that place, then I can really care for you. Then I can show up for you with vulnerability and allow you to show up for me with vulnerability. Again, that team, best team I ever worked on, we rumbled. We had some moments. But when I was able to center myself and say, I believe you did your best. I really did. And if I believe that you did your best, what does that mean for me in this moment? What do I need to do differently? That's how I begin to care for you. And in a way, that's how I begin to care for myself. So if I believe that you are doing the best that you can, then I need to start looking at my own sense of boundaries. We need to have a conversation like a working agreement conversation. And we need to understand how we can best work together given who we are if we are all doing the best that we can. In addition to that, we need to have a clear conversation about it. So if I know what my boundaries are, whether it be around rest or around like how I work or when I work, if I know what those are, but I just keep them to myself, wow, that's going to be annoying because I'm just going to be doing like whatever, and you don't know why. That person on your team that that doesn't show up to work until, say, 10 o'clock, maybe they're taking their kid to school, or maybe their kid has physical therapy, or maybe their dog has physical therapy. There are generally reasons why people do what they do. But what we fail to do in teams often, or just with each other, even with our spouses at times, is communicate that. Communicate those needs. And the first thing that we can do to care for ourselves is have those clear conversations. I usually am talking about this as it relates to like rest, and my favorite phrase by Brené Brown is exhaustion is not a status symbol. We need to have conversations about what sustainable pace means. And in order to do that, this is probably one of the most important things I can tell you today, is your productivity is not tied to your self-worth. Your self-worth is not tied to your productivity. So we need to understand what our pace is in order to care for ourselves, especially in the kind of work that we do. We need to understand ourselves. We need to have clear conversations. We need to recognize that we can deliver value without working 60 hours a week. Value is not tied to how many hours that you work. Value is tied to understanding your customer and what they need and delivering that and doing it in such a way that you can continue to do that for a very long time. And then last but not least, caring for ourselves means seeking joy. And we can seek joy at work. I will tell you that in my time in the workforce, I have thrown hula hoops into pools, don't ask. I have sang karaoke in a full costume on Halloween because my team met some goal and I had made a bet with them. So I sang I Love Rock and Roll by Joan Jett. I'm sure this shocks you, right? I am very, very shy. I have worn all kinds of costumes. I have done skits. I have done all kinds of fun things at work. We have to seek joy when this is what we do all day, every day. Now, joy is different for everyone. So maybe for you, joy is sort of sneaking away and reading a book of poetry in a corner for 5 minutes. That's great too. But know what your joy is and find ways to seek that every day. At the scooter store, literally, have fun was one of our 6 core values. We hammered it home all the time. But it does have to be intentional because we can get really wrapped up in the work that we do. And so you know I'm not going to let you get away with not having fun right now, right? All right, so here's what we are going to do. Oh, we have just enough time. We are going to have a rock, paper, scissors tournament. All right, how many of you have done this before? Have had a rock, paper, scissors tournament? Okay, so don't stand up yet. I want to give you the instructions really quickly. You are going to be shocked by A, how much fun this is, and B, how quickly it goes. All right, so in a moment, I am going to ask you to stand. You are going to turn to the closest person to you. It doesn't really matter because all of you are going to become best friends here in just a moment. So you're going to turn to the next person, and you're going to do rock, paper, scissors. Rock, paper, scissors, shoot. It is on the 4, because there is some kind of controversy about how this game works. Rock, paper, scissors, shoot. All right, so you're going to do that with the person next to you. One person will win best out of 3. This goes really, really quickly, I promise. The person who does not win becomes that other person's biggest cheerleader. You are going to follow that person around and cheer your butt off. You are going to clap and you are going to scream and you are going to say, go you, go you. If you know their name, that's helpful too. All right, so as each person wins best of 3, you need to go find someone else who has just won their round. And I promise you, we will actually get to the end and have a winner in this room who will be the Keep Austin Agile 2022 Rock, Paper, Scissors Champion! Woo! All right, any questions about how this works? You do have people around you who have done this before. All right, so on the count of 3, you are going to stand and you are going to play with your partner. On your mark, get set, 1, 2, 3. It's a little harder to get people back from such excitement. All right, I am wrapping up. First of all, where is our winner? Yes, Queen. All right, so here's what I hope for you today. This is my final remarks. First of all, I hope that today while you were in session that you seek out community, that you create community. You just had so much fun with all of these people. Go back and find that person that had that light in their eyes that just stood out to you and introduce yourself. We have all been in our homes for 2.5 years and we need people. So today I hope that you create community. I hope that you have courage, even in these sessions. Ask the question. Be willing to try something. If your keynote speaker asked you to do a rock, paper, scissors tournament, heck yeah, you did it. So you can go into these sessions and you can try these activities that these speakers have crafted so carefully for you. I encourage you to care for each other today and beyond today. Have boundary conversations. Have conversations about what you need, what brings you joy, and how you're going to just embark upon this life. I think we have all learned in the past 2.5 years just how brief this is and how we are faced with our mortality every day. So why would we not make the most of it, not just at home, not just in our fun and our hobbies, but every day? So I hope that you seek joy today and beyond today. Thank you.